Hello, folks. My name is Marco. I'm here on part of the Whole Earth Club, and I'm very happy and honored to introduce our guest today, Mr. David Radcliff, the director of the New Community Project. Welcome, Mr. Radcliff.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And would you please introduce us a little bit with what you do, your work, and what is the New Community Project?
Gladly. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. You Arizonans. By the way, I used to live in Arizona, lived up in the Peoria area for about 8 or 10 years. So fine times out there with coyotes howling in the background. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I am with New Community Project. We call ourselves a small Christian organization with a big goal, which is to change the world. So if you're going to change the world, you got to pick your battles. You can't do everything. And so our foci, you might say, are care for this earth. We're making a fine mess of a fine planet. Now, that's going to be our topic for this segment just now. The other second thing we work on is fairness for people, helping people have a decent chance for a decent life, really. And I'll talk more about that in the second section. But we work primarily there with girls and women around the world who are often on the outside looking in, with Native communities in the Americas, up in the Arctic, down in New Mexico, not next door to you guys actually, and also down in the Ecuadorian Amazon, trying to help them be strong as they face many challenges. And then also marginalized people in our own societies. A lot of people in the United States are struggling for various reasons, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the second section as well. So today we're talking about caring for God's creation. Wow, it's kind of like every system is under stress, actually, if you think about it. And I'm sure if I was in a room with you, I'd be asking you to comment on these various aspects. But in terms of our atmosphere, they say every human being can take an average of 2.3 years off their life just from air pollution around the world. And it's worse in some parts of the world and better in others, but on the average, 2.3 years off their life. So a lot of what we do to God's creation kind of comes back to haunt us, you might say. And then, of course, you've got, let's think about water for a moment. Clean water is precious around the world. And you in Arizona know a lot about water being precious because of water issues in your part of the world. Around the world, about 1 million children die every year from not having clean water to drink, actually. We send some volunteers. Maybe this could be you one of these days. We send some volunteers over to South Sudan to work in the summer times, like college kids, and when they got a summer off. And so I remember one year we had a group of four young people over there, and somebody in the community asked one of them, "Are people where you live rich?" Now, I don't know how you have answered that question, but the young woman he asked said, "Well, we've got people in America that are rich. Not me, not my friends, not my family, but there are people that are rich." He says to her, "Do you have a flush toilet every time you want one?" She said, "Well, yeah." He said, "Then you are rich." And what he meant by that was, there are 2.8 billion people in the world that don't have sanitation. That doesn't mean a flush toilet. That means a hole in the ground that keeps human waste separate from your water supply. And so that's the primary reason those million kids are dying around the world every year, because of not having something as basic as a toilet of one kind or another. So it's all kind of relative to where we come from as to what we have and whether we think we're rich or not, as in this situation. So think about the oceans for a moment. Speaking of the environment, again, that God made for us, think about the oceans. And I would ask you, if I was in the room with you, what are some things we're doing that are disrupting the oceanic ecosystem? And I'm sure you'd come up with pollution of one kind or another. Think oil, think plastics, think noise. Actually, big ships running through the shipping lanes from Asia to U.S. or U.S. to Europe or Africa to wherever, they create a lot of noise. And that makes it difficult for oceanic creatures who depend on that kind of communication underwater to be in touch with each other, or to talk about where we're going next, or where the food sources are, or sonar to actually locate the food sources. And so just things as simple as that we, again, aren't really thinking about when we think about human impacts on things like the oceans. And another kind of pollution actually is acidification. That's when carbon dioxide from our many fossil fuel combustion activities settles on the oceanic waters, and then you've got carbonic acid, rather than the normal pH balance of oceanic waters, which means the shellfish can't form shells, which has to be embarrassing if you're a shellfish, you know what I'm saying? So just these various things that we're doing. Forests, what about forests? Oh my golly, they're going fast. They say every minute around the world, 6 football fields of tropical forests are cut. I mean, of course, these tropical forests, they're huge sequesters of carbon. They are home for so many creatures, the habitat. They say one tree in the Amazon rainforest can house 650 different species of beetles I mean, for instance, in terms of the biodiversity in the forest. And of course, we're doing whatever we can, not whatever we can. We don't really maybe intentionally think about deforesting things when we're using. I try never to use a clean piece of paper. There's my note for today on the back of something I got out of the recycling someplace. I don't even know where. While I was at Longwood University. So let me preface this by saying that we have to treat everything on this earth as precious. I mean, God went to trouble to make it. And if you remember, every step of the way in Genesis 1, he says, it was good. God was saying it was good. He gave that blessing to every step of the way on that first day of creation. So how do we treat things as precious? That they're a part of God's creation and we need to handle them with care. So I was speaking at a college in Virginia, Longwood University, a couple of years ago. And they don't really pay me nothing for doing this stuff, but they did give me a free lunch coupon. I just had lunch with these guys. And I loved college cafeterias. So I didn't eat breakfast that morning because I knew I was getting a free lunch out of the deal. So when you're hungry, you sometimes make bad food choices. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, so I got a big slice of pizza, a tuna salad sandwich, and as I'm heading back to my table, I realize I'm going to have a mess on my hands. Well, I don't use napkins because paper comes from trees. So what I needed, and I didn't have my handkerchief that day, which I often do, which would have sufficed in that situation. But so I needed a napkin that had been previously extracted from the dispenser, but not previously used. Those were my criteria. I remembered I'd seen one on the floor back when I was moving from the buffet to the line to my table. So I retraced my steps, bent over, picked it up, stuck it in my pocket, swung around by the ice cream case, which I would return to later. And then I heard a voice behind me. Sir, did I see you pick up that napkin? I thought, uh-oh, I've been nailed. So I turned around. It's the food services manager, like the boss of the cafeteria. He said, here at Longwood University, we reward such behavior, picking up other people's trash. Here's a coupon for a free Chick-fil-A sandwich. So sometimes we just look weird doing the right thing by God's earth. Our earth doesn't have time for us to be embarrassed. There's so many things that we can do in a positive way every day with the choices we make. This earth is moving toward brinks of one kind or another, whether it's the air, whether it's the oceans, whether it's the forest, whatever it is. And anything we can do, we need to do, irregardless of how it makes us look in the eyes of our peers. I'm just saying that to you. All right, so that's where was I now? So I did all that.
I would have one question
yes, please.
For you, Mr. David. You talked about the different types of pollution that are very prevalent nowadays. What do you think is the role of misconceptions of what sustainable living is nowadays? And as university students in Arizona as well, what is the role of education and trying to reframe what we consider sustainable living to be more environmental friendly?
Well, part of the pollution issue is it's out of sight, out of mind. I mean, we throw our stuff maybe on the campus green, but at least in the trash can, and whoop, off it goes someplace. Or we've got stuff that we're letting get away from us, like plastic of some kind or another, gets in a stream, gets in the river, gets in the ocean. We never see it there. And so part of it is, I think we need to encounter the problems that we are causing. And that's really part of our, and I don't think this will lead in for your question, but part of our learning tours is to take us to places to see these things. I mean, we're seeing Alaska melting and burning and growing because of the tree line advancing. So Alaska's changing before our eyes. But most people who don't go to Alaska, they're not going to see that. And they won't realize the impact that climate change, in this case, is having on places like Alaska. So I think the first stage is to encounter these things in a university setting. And universities are well placed with experiential learning of their own kind, taking groups around. Maybe you should go to a landfill near here, or go to the recycling center if there is one, and just see what actually is getting recycled. And so having the encounter, the personalizing of the project, of the problem, I think is really important. And that's a big part of what we do at New Community Project. Just helping us open our eyes to the things that are going on all around us, and then to think about, well, what do we do next? So we actually have a little scheme. If you heard of, you guys are international, some of you are internationals in this room, the 4-H programs in the United States. Head, Heart, Hands, Health. And it's kind of an agricultural project for kids in rural communities and others. Well, we turn it around to start with heart. We think you have to feel what's going on around you first. That's the key thing. If you get a feel for what's going on, then that affects you on an inner level. And then we think about head as what's the information, now that you care about something because you've experienced it, what's the information you need? And this is where a college classes come in perfect, of course. What's the information you need to make the good choices and to learn more background on that particular issue? And I would just say to all of you, including you guys and you, I would say to you that, find the thing. I was speaking at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire a couple of years ago, and one girl had heard me in a couple different classes, as you have. And so she was saying, well, what should I do? I'm hearing all the things you're saying. I said to her, dig deep and don't be afraid of what you find. So find the thing that you care about and that piques your interest or your passion, and then dive into that thing environmentally or any other issue it may be environmentally. So the thinking part. So heart, head, the information you need, then hands, well, what do I do with what I know? And that's where colleges are very well placed to come up with practical programs for the community even. You could be community actors here for the community as to what needs to change to give us the opportunity, or maybe, I guess the opportunity is the right word, to be more environmentally responsible. And then the final one is health. So heart, head, hands, health. And so that one is, well, what's that better world we're looking for? What's the vision? What's that holistic, complete world that God has in mind for this creation that we can be a part of? And so that's the vision that kind of draws us on. So that's my long answer to your short question.
That was a great answer.
Let me see if I've got anything else here I want to cover before we go. So we have New Community Project. Here's a little summary of what we're doing to address these things actively ourselves. We have what we call a 2 million tree campaign, where we're over 10 years, we're hoping to plant 2 million trees, so that's 200,000 a year, and we're on track to do that in Africa and Asia primarily. I'll give you another example of a place we're working to address the impacts of climate change. Malawi, Christian rural communities in Malawi are down to a meal a day on a regular basis. So one of the things we're doing in a place like Malawi, where rural Christian communities are facing really famine, down to 1 meal a day because of climate change impacts. It's drier much of the year, and at other times when it rains, it pours, it floods, and those are characteristics of climate change. So they're not able to actually produce enough food to feed their families. So what they've done is take to charcoal production, and you can, I don't know if you know how charcoal is made, but you can see it in Africa and in other parts of the world, where you cut down a tree, you chop it up, you stack it up, you set it on fire, you cover it with soil, let it slow bake in an anaerobic process, and then you've got charcoal after some days or weeks of baking it. Well, then you sell it out by the road to earn money to buy your family food. Well, it takes, for any one family in Malawi, to cut enough trees, to make enough charcoal, to earn enough money to feed their family for a month, it takes 2 acres of trees. Imagine the deforestation. So we're there in Malawi working with them. We're doing some reforestation there, probably 80, 90,000 trees this year. We'll be working with our partner there to plant. Also, we've done some food relief just to help them bridge the gap between the last harvest and whenever the next harvest is going to come. My friend Tom Benevento, our Sustainable Living Director in Virginia, spent 3 months there last winter working with these rural Christian communities to figure out how to raise food in a climate unfriendly world. And we're also working with the Jane Goodall Institute. May she rest in peace. The Jane Goodall Institute to figure out how to feed people while preserving habitat for animals and for nature. And so we've done some really good things with agroforestry, where you're mixing the trees in with the food crops. So those are some of the kinds of things. We're also supporting native communities down in the rainforest in Ecuador, up in the Arctic, also in New Mexico, because native communities are some of the last ones defending our last wild places. So we're trying to keep these native communities strong. And I go to a lot of schools. I'm visiting lots of schools and just talking to school kids there. I was in a school in Wichita, Kansas last week at Wheatland Elementary, and I'm talking about these things to the 4th graders. And they're very interested. There's one particular girl who has a lot to say, lots of questions, answers, responses, and whatever. When the session was over, and then I was going out the door to talk to the 5th graders at the next classroom, she came up to me as I was going out the door and said, I feel like my life is so meaningless. This is a 4th grader, okay? I feel like my life is so meaningless. We're talking about all the things we're doing to nature, and I really care about nature. So she has the feeling toward nature, but I don't feel like I'm doing anything to make a difference. She said, here's 71 cents. It's all I've got. I said, that will plant 7 trees, and that will make a difference. So find the place that evokes your passion, your interest, your deep concern. Pray to God to give you ideas for how to move forward on that, to make our earth better for everything that lives here, including us.